I am presenting Union Gospel Press's Sunday School Lesson number 1, the start of the summer quarter, Sunday, June 1st, 2025. The lesson is entitled Learn from Good Examples. Lesson text comes from Hebrews chapter 11, verses 1 through 2, and verses 4 through 13. Related scriptures are Genesis 4, 3 through 7, 5:21 through 24, 6:9 through 22, 12:1 through 5, and 17:15 through 22. The place is unknown. The time is about 67 AD. This week we explore the Hall of Faith. Here we have the names of people willing to trust God in the face of opposition against all odds. They please God with their faith and serve as good examples for us. Today's aim, facts, to show that we need to have faith in order to please God. Principle, to stress that only those who have faith can please God. Application, to emphasize the need to exercise our faith daily. Illustrating the lesson, the examples of Hebrews 11 show that faith is believing God's promises and acting upon them despite temptations to give up. Practical points. 1. God commends those who trust him when they do not see his promises immediately fulfilled. Hebrews 11, 1 through 2. 2. True faith always impacts the way one worships and lives. Verse 4. 3. Faith prompts us to act in accordance with the conviction that God will reward us. Verses 5 through 6. 4. People of faith obey God even when they do not fully understand him. Verse 7. 5. People of faith act on what God says, leaving the results to him. Verses 8 through 10. 6. God always rewards our faith, no matter how small or faltering it may be. Verses 11 through 13. Golden text. Without faith it is impossible to please him, for he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Hebrews 11:6. Today we have two lesson outlines. The first is faith defined, Hebrews 11:1 through 2. The second is faith illustrated, Hebrews 11:4 through 13. Introduction. Cooperstown, New York, is the home of the Baseball Hall of Fame. People come to see Babe Ruth's uniform, Ty Cobb's glove, and many other artifacts and displays. It holds a collection of plaques honoring all those considered worthy of induction into the hall. The Bible, too, has something of its own Hall of Fame, and it can be found in Hebrews 11. What sets the Bible's Hall of Fame apart is that it centers not on human achievement, but on faith in what God can do. It is a hall of faith. The entrance is marked by a succinct definition of faith, followed by accounts of its members as they are marked by humility and a heartfelt confidence in God's goodness and grace. The Bible makes it clear that faith is the essential ingredient of the Christian life. This being the case, it is important that we consider exactly what faith is. Our lesson text presents a picture of biblical faith, first by description and then by examples. Faith defined, Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Verse 2. For by it the elders obtained a good report. The closing verses of Hebrews 10 reminds us that the person who has faith is the one who is justified before God. The Hall of Faith chapter serves to encourage believers to persevere in their faith, verses 38 through 39. With these facts in mind, our writer deemed it important to explore the nature of true faith. Hebrews 11:1 is one of the most familiar verses in the New Testament because it answers a very important question. What is faith? The verse consists of two descriptive phrases. They are roughly parallel in meaning, but not exactly. The second phrase further explains the first. The word translated as substance can refer to an object reality or to a strong confidence in something. See 1:3 and 3:14, where the word is used in these two ways. Perhaps the two sentences can be combined. Biblical faith is a strong confidence in something objectively true. It is certainly not some ethereal, unfounded feeling as the world sometimes understands the idea of faith. The biblical idea of hope is also very different from the world's conception, which is often a desperate, against all odds, clinging to the notion that things might turn out all right. The believer's hope is built on the firm foundation of the promises of God and his redeeming purpose. This biblical brand of hope is as certain as the fact that God is trustworthy and good. Like substance, the word evidence has both an objective and subjective sense. It can refer to proof or to the strong convictions that arise in the presence of such proof. A person of strong faith believes in the unseen spiritual realities as much as they were visible to his physical eye. These spiritual realities are of eternal value, the things that make life worth living, 2 Corinthians 4:18. The realities in which we hope are unseen. If they were seen, we would not have hope but sight, Romans 8:24 through 25. Faith means we live in confidence in the promises God has given us. Linking the truths that he was teaching to the Old Testament for this largely Jewish audience, the author of Hebrews pointed out that faith was what God was always looking for throughout Old Testament history, 11:2. The elders here refer to his Jewish readers, Old Testament ancestors. Additionally, although we do not know the author of Hebrews, with certainty, he was almost certainly a Christian of Jewish ancestry himself. Faith was by the means by which these ancestors obtained a good report or were declared to be righteous in God's sight, Genesis 15:6, and thus were the recipients of God's approval. Faith illustrated, verse 4. By faith Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it he being dead yet speaketh, verse 5. By faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found, because God had translated him. For before his translation he had this testimony, that he pleased God. Verse 6, but without faith it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of him that diligently seek him. Verse 7, by faith Noah, being warned of God of things not seen as yet, moved with fear, prepared an ark to the saving of his house, by the which he condemned the world, and became heir of the righteousness which is by faith. Verse 8, by faith Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed, and he went out, not knowing whither he went. Verse 9, by faith he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. Verse 10, for he looked for a city which have foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Verse 11, through faith also Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed, and was delivered of a child when she was past age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. Verse 12, therefore sprang there even of one and him as good as dead, so many as the stars of the sky in multitude, and of the sand which is by the seashore innumerable. Verse 13. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. Abel, Hebrews 11:4. The list of people of faith proceeds chronologically. The first example goes all the way back to the son of Adam, the first man, in Genesis 4:2-7. We are told how Abel, who was a shepherd, offered some of the choice meat from the firstborn of his flock, while Cain merely gave some of the fruit he had harvested. The Lord looked with favor on Abel's sacrifice. God did not look with favor on the offering of crops that his brother Cain gave. Hebrews emphasizes that Abel offered his sacrifice by faith, and that this is what prompted God's acceptance of his gift. This acceptance was a testimony that Abel was counted as righteous in God's sight, but his brother was not. The phrase, he being dead yet speaketh, is a figure of speech for someone's long-lasting influence. In Abel's case, although he suffered an early death at the hands of his envious brother, his example of faith lives on as an example and inspiration to God's people. His life had an eternal value and purpose. Enoch, Hebrews 11:5-6. Because of his great faith, Enoch received the mysterious blessing of not experiencing death. Genesis 5:24 reports that Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. The term translated in Hebrews means to transfer, to remove from one place to another. In the midst of his life, he was taken to be in the presence of the God with whom he had already been walking so closely. 2 Kings 2:9-12, where we learn of how Elijah was also taken away to heaven while still living. The startling nature of what happened to Enoch is reflected in the repetition of the statement that God took him away, and in the statement that he was not found. Hebrews 11:5. Words that may hint at the profound impact his sudden disappearance may have had on Enoch's generation. In fact, the author's language here is that of Genesis 5:24. Enoch was honored in this way because his life brought great satisfaction to God. Only by faith can a person please God as Enoch did. Hebrews 11:6 explains the indissolubility of faith. Enoch's life illustrates the life of faith that should be evident in all of God's people. He is said to have walked with God, so we know that he possessed the two crucial components of faith that this verse says are at the heart of a relationship with him. We must believe that God exists and that he rewards those who seek him. Since Enoch had fellowship with God, he certainly believed that God existed. True knowledge of God is more than merely an intellectual acknowledgement of a divine being. It is an experiential knowledge of the one who has revealed himself in his word. The second crucial belief is that God rewards those who seek him. The fact that Enoch continued in his fellowship with God is evidence that he was anticipating the blessing that God promised. That God promises to those who are dedicated and passionate about their desire to know him. Psalms 119:2, Matthew 7:7. Noah, Hebrews 11:7. One of the most widely known figures from the Bible, Noah demonstrated his faith by building a huge sea vessel and building it inland when there was not yet any sign that it was needed. He believed what God told him, Genesis 6:11-22. His faith provided him with evidence of things not seen, Hebrews 11:1. The fear that Noah had was the healthy kind born out of reverence and a confidence that God would do just as he said. Proverbs 1:7. He acted as a responsible head of his family. Obedience to God is always the most important way to act for the good and safety of our loved ones. As a recipient of God's grace, Genesis 6:8, Noah is a type of the person of faith being delivered from God's judgment. His faith stands in contrast to the unbelief of the people around him when they were warned by Noah about their unrighteousness and perhaps about the fearsome judgment to come. See 2 Peter 2:5. Of course, the presence of the ark itself was the clearest warning of what was coming. The people's continued unbelief doomed them, and Noah became a concrete example of a man living because of his faith. Hebrews 10:38. His godly life and obedience demonstrated that faith with unmistakable clarity. Abraham, Hebrews 11:8 through 10. Considering that Abraham is often regarded as the father of the faithful, Galatians 3:6 through 9 and 29, it is not surprising that the author of Hebrews made a more extended study of his example of faith. God commanded him to leave his homeland of Ur in southeastern Mesopotamia and travel to a land many thousand miles away. Incredibly, when he set out, he was not even sure where he was going. He only went with the promise that was going to give him an inheritance, many blessings, and the honor of becoming a blessing to the whole world. Genesis 12:1 through 3. Abraham's faith would be tested again and again. When he got to the place where God wanted him to go, he did not immediately see such evidence that the promised land was going to be his. Hebrews 11:9 says he sojourned in the land, meaning that he lived as a stranger there. He was an alien who did not feel at home among the people he found in Canaan, people who had no intention of giving up what belonged to them. Much time passed, and Abraham continued to have a generally nomadic existence. He lived in tents, tabernacles, a striking symbol of the fact that he had no real home at this point. The passage of time is highlighted by the fact that first Isaac and then Jacob, who themselves were in line to be heirs of God's covenant, and would be singled out for their faith in this chapter, verses 20 through 21, arrived on the scene, and the situation did not seem to change. Jacob was 15 when Abraham died, Genesis 21:5, 25:7, and 26. During all this time, Abraham never formally owned any land except the parcel he bought for his family's burial, 23:1 through 20. We also cannot forget how Abraham's faith was tested when God asked him to sacrifice Isaac, the child of promise, Genesis 22:1 through 19. Yet Abraham trusted God and had faith that he would even raise his son from the dead, Hebrews 11:19. How was it that Abraham was able to hold fast to his faith under such difficult circumstances? Hebrews 11:10 tells us that he was looking forward to more than just an earthly inheritance. The cities of earth will all crumble, but the eternal city of God, the heavenly Jerusalem, has lasting foundations that can never be shaken and will last forever. Here again, a man of faith was living by evidence of things not seen, verse 1. Sarah, Hebrews 11:11 through 13. Biblical scholars disagree about whether the original Greek of this verse makes Abraham's or Sarah's faith the main focus. Whichever side is correct, it surely is not unimportant that Sarah is mentioned here. It is true that Sarah did not respond very well when first informed that she was to have a child, Genesis 18:9 through 15. but she was around 90 years old, well past the age of bearing children. So we should ask ourselves whether we would have responded any differently. Despite her original response, Sarah must be commended for her growth in faith and willingness to trust God with the seemingly impossible. Her faith enabled her to grasp the trustworthiness of God, and she was enabled to bear the son of promise. Because of the faith of both Abraham and Sarah, abundant life sprang forth from those as good as dead. Hebrews 11:12. Abraham and Sarah were as good as dead as far as a reasonable hope of conceiving and having a family was concerned, but God is not limited in what he can bring to pass. There is a contrast not only between life and death in this verse, but also between one and many. Out of just one person, a numberless multitude would come. The striking imagery of the sand on the seashore and the stars in the sky, borrowed from Genesis 22:17, highlights the magnitude, majesty, and beauty of how God blesses the faith of his people. The these all of Hebrews 11:13 refers to everyone mentioned thus far in this chapter, including Abel, Noah, Abraham, and Sarah. The promises include not only the ones given to Abraham, but also others. Genesis 3:15. The patriarchs did not live to experience the fulfillment of what had been promised, but their faith remained strong until the day of their death. It was as if they could envision the reality of God's promised kingdom off in the distance. Hebrews 11:1. That is what they lived for and longed for, and that is what sustained them. As an old song says, this world is not my home. I'm just a passing through. Every person of faith recognizes that we are spiritual pilgrims on the way to better things. 1 Peter 2:11. The patriarchs of old did not let themselves get too attached to what the world has to offer. Let us follow their example, living by faith for what will truly last. This world is not our home. We are called to live in the world, but we are not of the world. John 17:14-16. Questions. 1. What does the word substance in Hebrews 11:1 mean? 2. How is the biblical idea of hope different from the world's? 3. What does it mean to obtain a good report? Verse 2. 4. What does he being yet dead speaketh mean? Verse 4. 5. In what special way did God bless the faith of Enoch? 6. What are the two crucial components of faith that make a relationship with God possible? 7. How did Noah demonstrate that he was a man of faith? 8. Why did the author of Hebrews devote extra attention to the life of Abraham? 9. What circumstances acted as tests of Abraham's faith? 10. How should the fact that we are strangers in this world affect the way we live? This concludes the Sunday School lesson for Sunday, June 1st, 2025. Thank you for listening, and please remember to click the subscribe tab. God bless.